Hello. Hello, Dr. James. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to dive into this conversation today.
Me too. I know you have a great, powerful story, and I don't know if you want to share what you just shared with me before we hit record. A big congratulations to you. Do you want to share that here?
Well, I just became an official US citizen, so I will welcome myself to Team USA.
Welcome to the United States. Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. All right. So where I like to begin with all of our episodes here, when when you think about your life, think back to a moment in your life that was what we would consider a life-changing event. What was that story for you? What was your life like leading up to that event?
Quite a few, really. If I look back, um, I was born in one of the post-communist countries in Europe and raised there as well. And so I haven't lived in that country for over 20 years now, but I feel like the first moment happened there where I realized I need to find a way to be free. And that's in any sense of the word, free, free from the toxic family dynamics, free from the toxic governmental setup, free from how they're boxing us in and not letting us be whom we are actually created to be. So then I left, and then throughout living in 6 different countries since then, I would say I probably had an enlightening moment in every single stop that I made on that journey. Most importantly and most recently, one for me was when I was married to a covert narcissist that's already in the United States with whom I share a child who is currently 7. And things got to the point where I started questioning my own reality and my own existence in this world. And my point of exile and exit was when I realized the same manipulation techniques that were used on me were beginning to be used on my child, who then was 3 years old. So lots of turning points, on the journey. But I couldn't be happier where I am right now and how I am building this life for me and my son very intentionally because of all of these different stops that we had to make, on the way to becoming whom we are today.
Mm. That's something. 6 countries. Wow. I know that had to be just the exposure to all the different cultures and yeah.
Yes, definitely fascinating experience. I myself am a trained applied linguist, so I hold a PhD in applied linguistics. I speak 6 languages fluently.
Wow.
And so the kind of comes with the territory in a sense. I would go to a country and do my work, and then I would fall in love with the culture and learn the language of the people. So that's how I managed to travel so much. I'm hoping to get to that point of exploring other places in the world again with my son as he grows a little older. And, traveling with a 7-year-old might not be as exciting as it might be with a 15-year-old, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, with the work you're doing, I'm sure you're going to get there. Being able to see all these places. And then there's always the fun children activities and things that I'm sure will be at all your stops. So, yeah. So, who were the women in your life who helped you go through these seasons, go through the changes and moving and what you experienced in your relationship? Who were the
I would say that when I was thinking about this, the first person that comes to my mind is obviously my mom. And it's kind of a tricky question because my mom is a product of communism, right? Since I was born and she still lives in one of the post-communist countries in Europe. Therefore, I am reluctant to call her names, put any labels. I am trained now in seeing narcissistic personality characteristics. However, I will not call her a narcissist because everything that she is was done to her.
Right.
Right? She had absolutely no say or choice or freedom in any of it. So it would be unfair of me to be blaming her or shaming her for whom she is, right? She's also
Mhm.
80 plus years old at this point. There's no changing, right? So definitely the first one, but I'm saying this is tricky because she was also the reason why I had this desire of leaving my country and leaving my family and becoming my own person because of how she was raised and how the system conditioned her to be whom she is right now. There wasn't really any maternal love or any, other forms of showing me what the actual true family should look like. It was very much, here are the rules of the government, follow it. And we rule like that at home too, right? So very different from, I know a lot of my American friends have no idea what I'm talking about here. But very different from what I'm seeing and how I'm raising my child right now, as well. But I'm saying that also in a sense that because of whom she is and how she raised me and my sister, I was able to realize that that place is not a place for me to be. So in a sense, the badness, right, or the negative things pushed me out of there so that I could become the positive, the goodness in me that I was always made created to be, but otherwise would have never had a chance to experience. So I try to look at this as, your generational trauma and your generational issues helped me see that these are issues and now are hopefully helping me parent my son in very different ways. So like when people usually say, oh, because of how my parents raised me or my mom or my aunt or whoever they have as this important person, they say, I now know how to be a mom. I was going to say, I know what not to do.
Right, right.
That makes sense.
It does.
Exactly.
Friends. So I know you touched on a little bit with were there any other women before we continue? Any other women you want to?
I was going to mention myself because I feel like in your entire story behind your podcast, recognizing that you are the woman who pulled yourself up is very important on this journey. So I was going to say that it took me many years to forgive the me that did things the way I did and was the way I was before I knew better.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That it is. It is. I love that. And I'm not gonna talk about my story here. It's not the place, but I'll just say through my own story and my family and all of that. I am with you. It's just like what we've seen our parents go through. It's just like we're gonna do different.
Right.
Take the lessons learned from that and make sure we do different. So I love that you recognize yourself as someone that your son's gonna now have, as a woman who raises him and gives him a good life and teaches him the valuable lessons. I love that. All right. Anything more you want to share about your mom? I know you touched a little bit about what happened in your country, but like anything more you want to share about her upbringing or
You know, when you were born during the Second World War in a country where Russia rules, because this was the time when we still had USSR and a lot of other European countries were under the reign of Russia in one shape or another. It's a really there've been some conversations over the years that I realized I shouldn't be continuing because nor did they bring any clarity or enlightenment to either one of us, but definitely they were just aggravating my mom since she just couldn't even grasp the concepts I was trying to address, right? So I just realized, how we always say, someone is already old and no sense to try to change them. It wasn't really that I was trying to change them. I just realized there's no point to try and make someone see something that they were preconditioned not being able to see at all, no matter how they would try, right? It's just when you're a product of a system, you don't exist in terms of identity, right? Like you are what the government tells you you are. So it's kind of interesting, and it's also been very interesting to be noticing that even though the country has been outside of USSR for many years now, but it still really runs as if we were still back in communist times, right? So I know, it's not really to say I don't want to like blame anyone. Like I was not born when she was born, so I don't know what kind of choices she had to make in order for me and my sister to safely go to school and grow up and, for the opportunities that she provided for us. But I definitely can say that I do not envy, her story. And my dad, unfortunately, was very sick when I was born. I have a much older sister, so He was after a couple of strokes by the time I was born, so he wasn't really a partner to my mom in any shape or form. So she had to do all of it, on her own. And we have this joke in that part of Europe I'm from, that women are the best looking ladies driving tractors, because that's the reality, like you can't rely on a man to do that. That's why when I moved, and I live in the Midwest in the US, when I moved here, I've been unsnowing my own driveway, and people are like, why not paying someone to do it? And I was like, people do that. Like, isn't that something we're supposed to handle ourselves? So yeah, I mean, it's a really, I would love for her to write her story one day, but I don't think she doesn't speak any English, so but it's very interesting to like see and over the years also to build up more compassion for her, right? And instead of expecting her, like, how can you not know that saying this is hurtful? I got to the point where of course she doesn't. My first assumption is, do not expect, because you don't know, this is hurtful, right? Because to you, this is your normalcy, this is your everyday, this is how you were raised. So I feel like it's really important to also notice that and acknowledge that, because I work with a lot of women who were raised by narcissistic moms right now. And the first thing we usually work with them is to stop blaming someone and saying, oh, but why did she, and asking why. Like, you don't know someone else's story, you didn't walk in their shoes, you have no idea what they had to go through to get you to where you are today, right? So it's that this is really hard, because this is, as you know, this culture that we live in is very individualistic and very blame and shame posing, right, on people. So it's like, oh, someone needs to be, who is going to be held responsible here? So but it isn't this black and white ever, right? When families are in a conversation where generational trauma comes into place, where system changes come into place, where cultural shifts happen, political, whatnot. So I really try to make sure that I explain to people, you hating someone for what they did to you, even if they didn't know what they were doing, right? Because they didn't know any better, is just hurting you. It's really, forgiving is, in my opinion, for you and you only. Has nothing to do with this other person, right? Like, you may literally, you don't have to ever look at them. You can completely remove yourself from their existence, because there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, and forgiveness does not equal access, right? But you need to do this in your own heart. Otherwise, you just live this life of, they hold you captive in this little prison of your own brain and of your own heart. They go and live their lives, happily ever after, but you are a prisoner of your own feelings.
He is so true. I love the work of Carolina Mays. I don't know if you've ever read any of her books or her work, but I love she touches so much on, healing, like the anatomy of the spirit. And he touches, like, when you don't forgive, that stores in your body, and
Yes,
it ends up manifesting in diseases and all of that. So true. I love your point there. Love it. So thinking about your mom and what your family has gone through, what pattern, like, do you want to touch on any patterns that you might have observed, whether it's emotional inheritance, traumas, maybe even resilience and strength, any patterns?
Two things that come to my mind now. One is definitely extreme version of strict parenting, if that makes sense, that comes with no emotions. So you were not allowed, I'm talking about myself here, I was never allowed to have emotions. I was never allowed to show any emotions. I couldn't cry. Crying is a sign of weakness. But as I want to say, a prelude, this made me resilient.
Yeah.
Right? So it is interesting how I try to now balance between my son happens to be a twice exceptional child. So if, whoever is listening is not familiar with the 2E designation for kids today, it means he is academically very gifted and very, very intelligent, but also comes from trauma and has ADHD, might be on the spectrum, neurodivergence in any shape or form, right? So it's kind of interesting for me to now be unlearning some of the things as I'm doing them as I go, because I would, raise my voice and I would see him shut down because 2E kids do not respond to yelling, right? So it's very, very interesting, but I make it a point, obviously now after so many years and reading about it and being in multiple therapy rooms over the years and whatnot, and coaching myself now, I am really seeing that it doesn't matter what you said or what you did. What matters is the repair after. And I feel like with my mom specifically, that stage never came. So it was really hard to forgive because there was never any acknowledgement that she could have done anything wrong, that she might have said some hurtful words, never, right? But so I make it a point that I focus on the repair that I can do with my child after situations like that. We're all humans. I get it, right? We all say things and do things sometimes we don't mean in anger. This is never going to change. And as a qualitative researcher, I've done enough interviews myself to, understand that people's stories are so complex and so complicated that there is no judgment that should be placed on any of it, right? It's acknowledgement that needs to happen and just figuring out what kind of lessons can we learn here and moving on, right? Not be brooding in it and be thinking, oh my goodness, should I have said that? Should I have done that? It's not serving anyone any purpose. So I really feel like the biggest problem is the lack of repair after the damage, right? That never came.
Right, that they didn't have the opportunity to. I think due to the information age that we're now in, it does allow us to do more research and recognize those things and make those steps to make the change. So I feel like my next question I had for you, you touched on a bit, but if you want to elaborate more to it, you can. But how do you feel, either through yourself or and even your mom in any small ways, how do you feel you've taken the traumas and all of that and really made gold out of your story? Like, how did you turn your story into gold?
So I actually, a couple of months ago, I decided that I have been in higher education my entire life, right? I have been a professor in a classroom for multiple years, and now I work as a researcher at a college. So my entire grown-up life, all I know is higher education. But I decided at some point last year specifically that I want to help other women who are also healing from narcissistic abuse. So what I like to call happened is I took my pain and I turned it into a purpose. So that's when I created my coaching. It's a business, but really I call it a vocation to me because that's the kind of work I really like to do. And it really stemmed from my realization that I would have never really got with my ex-husband in the first place if he didn't recognize in me the broken child, the child that needed, and so from the very beginning, and I mean, literature and research show this right now that, narcissists will always target empaths, right? So those of us who are extremely sensitive and feel what they can't feel, right? They will target you. And that's exactly when I look back at my story is what happened here. So I try to really use this I use any life experience as information, and I use any information as data, right? So I treat it like data, and I try to see, I've published multiple books in the past a couple of years on the very topic of narcissistic abuse, and I've even realized that, I have a story of the family court in this country as well, because as you might know, sharing a child with a narcissistic person is another version of hell. That a lot of us would say. So at this point, I literally wrote books about how the system is broken and how the family court needs a repair of its own doing. So I just feel like, it's a really important certain age and at certain point in your life, you reevaluate. And honestly, I don't really see a lot of that in the United States. Like my friends around me, they've oftentimes have been working in the same place for 20, 30 years. They see their identity through what they do, right? And I don't. For me is, God created me to do multiple wonderful things. The world is big. I am yet to explore, some parts of it. And to me, this is normal. Like I've given 25 years to academia, and now I want to move out of there and move towards helping other people through my own story with the tools that I've developed on this journey, right? So I just wish there was more of that, because sometimes I get clients that I am helping with this, and it's almost like they are so deadly afraid of change, right? Like I've always been doing it like this, and this, but it's not working. That's why you're here, right? So for me, and I feel like that's why my story comes handy here, because I am not afraid to pack and go and move to a new country tomorrow, right?
And with one humans.
Exactly. So I feel like change is always for the better. And that's what I'm really trying to instill in the women I work with, that don't be afraid. Only better things are coming. You can't go back to the lowest point you were already at. So it's interesting how in this particular culture that we are in, it's not that easy to have people believe you, even if you are a living example of this being true.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you froze there for a minute. I don't know if it happened out time, but you're good now. Okay. No, so true. I love that. So beautiful. And something you said there made me think about, at one point we had like, like in the Native American culture, we had like clan women as an example, and cultures around the world, women were the elders of the community, and people go to sit at their feet and hear the stories and learn the lessons. So something you said at the beginning made me think of that. So I think there does come a point in all, everyone's lives, like, yeah, embrace the change and be willing to, accept that role as like an elder essentially in the community that's going to give back and teach our young people, So I love that. All right. Next, I want to touch a little bit on tradition. What family traditions do you have that you do?
So it's interesting also because, my son was born already in the United States, right? And his dad is not American, is also not from the same country with me. His dad is from one of the African countries. So I'm raising a biracial boy, as a solo mom. And so it's very interesting because I'm a linguist by training, as I mentioned. And everywhere I go, when people find out where I'm from, they ask me, are you teaching him your language? That's the first question. And I intentionally am not, right? Because he is not from the country I am from. His country is here. He needs to learn and develop and, grow in the spirit of what this country has to offer, right? Like, having a mom from Germany, France, or Great Britain doesn't make a kid French, German, or British. That's opinion, right? So we also don't really travel back to my country that often. So, but I made it a point because my mom was on me since they cannot communicate and I always have to translate, right? So she was like, you should teach him some. And I taught him all the most important swear words in my native language so that he doesn't get into trouble at school, because no one knows what he's saying, but also kind of like a funny thing, between him and my mom at the moment. So I also don't teach my son the languages that I speak because he's not to me. He has completely different interests. He is very interested in sports. So I try to encourage and empathize that. I told him we have a deal. I will sign him up for any sport to try as long as it's not American football because his brain is too precious to play that. But I mean, he likes this and I liked that when I was at his age, right? That doesn't mean I need to, do the same things with him that I did as a kid, right? So I try to really have him lead this. And we develop a lot of our own little traditions. One of our little thing is we go to Texas Roadhouse, which is our favorite restaurant, every month for mommy and son dates.
Cool.
Right. So, I mean, we always order the same. People know we live in a small town, so people know us now, and it's like, same, yes, please, right? But it's like we do our own little things. We love doing road trips, for example, right? And we would drive between one and we would get in a car and have friends in other states since we've lived in multiple different states at this point here. So we would get in a car and drive the whole day to see our friends in a state 12 hours away, right? And so we try to build this in a way that works for us
Mhm.
without having or letting any societal pressures get to us. Like
Mhm.
this year for Christmas we didn't we didn't go crazy cleaning the house before. It's just the two of us. We clean the house on a regular basis. I don't see the need to spend my only 3 days off before the holidays to be running like a crazy stressed woman and cleaning and undusting and whatnot, right? Like it's not the point here. So but one thing that is really important to me is to instill a true relationship between my son and Jesus, right? I don't identify as a Christian. I identify as a humble follower of Jesus Christ, right? Because I, in this country, have a lot to say about different types of churches and denominations and whatnot. And for me, what is important is that he has a personal relationship with Jesus and he understands whom Jesus is, which is my job, in my opinion, to teach him that. But that doesn't mean you need to be, in church every single Sunday and, serve and do all those other things that people have like checklists, it seems, these days of what makes a good Christian. To me, it's like how you treat other people, how you live your life, what you believe is right and wrong. So yeah, that's something that we do. That was never done with me because I grew up in a country where everybody is by default Roman Catholic.
Mhm.
Uh, and it took me many, many years to unlearn that legalism, that attention to church being more important than God himself and whatnot. So I absolutely don't want that for him. I want him to have his own understanding of the higher power that I choose to believe in.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Yeah, we know faith is so important. I love that you're instilling that in him at a young age now because a lot of people I feel like they don't embrace their relationship with God or Christ until like beyond 40 or when something traumatic happens or not. So I
And
love
so, to say even more, we do about our traditions is we go to a lot of Christian music concerts.
Oh, I love it.
Almost every single month, we are somewhere. He is a big fan of Forrest Frank.
Um,
Wants to be his own Christian rapper when he grows up. So we every single month, I try to find opportunities for us to go to a concert of the artist that we have heard on the radio in the car, and whatnot. And that is to me worship. And that to me is also like building that relationship with the God we believe in, right? It's not just, raising your hands in church on a Sunday and then going back home and being mean to your family, right? But it is actually going there and living it. So that's what living your faith means to me, right? So we've been doing a lot of that. And I think in 2025, we went to 12 different concerts. So that means at least a concert.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have to look up the artists you mentioned too. And my final question for you as we wrap up here a little bit, if you had the young people sitting at your feet, kind of like they did back in the day, and you were to impart words of wisdom for them, what do you want our next generation to know? What would you say?
I want to say that, and I'm also saying this is like a conclusion of years being in a classroom, right? And teaching college students and having multiple conversations about multiple different things not entirely related to the topic of the class, that we were discussing on that day is you are not one thing. Right, that's so important to me to remember and remind people of. You are not the job you have, you are not what your even mom or dad tell you you are. You are not the major you study in college. You are not the one pastime that became your hobby, that became your passion. You are not one thing. You have the right to exist in multiple spaces and you have the right to be pliable, right? Like the culture is always going to bring boxes and throw boxes at you and try to. You have the right and the power to make these boxes shaped in a way you want them to be.
Mhm.
So it requires sometimes to be a rebel, right? And you will have a lot of people obviously against you, but it's so worth it at the end of the day, where you go to sleep and you can exhale and you feel, I was today whom God or whatever you believe in created me to be.
I love that. So beautiful. Thank you for that. And if anyone wants to learn more about you and the work that you do, how would you summarize it and where can they find you?
Oh, I basically, in one sentence, help women heal from narcissistic abuse in any shape or form, as well as help parents of twice exceptional children parent those brilliant kids and, handle the tantrums and whatnot. I do have a website that has all of my books, all of my podcasts, all of my information that, I've ever done, which is www.echonomorecoaching.org. So if you know anything, Echo was the person in the ancient stories who was always, following the voice of the narcissist, right? So that's why in through my practice, I really try to make sure that we regain our own voices and stop echoing other people's words.
Love that. That's powerful. I was curious what the origin was there. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
A pleasure. All right, enough.